The approach that we've been taking to the handling of data and the management of its use is less than ideal. It's been really useful for the purposes that we've used it for in order to make our interface and to test it to make sure that we can manipulate the data by passing it from one page to another, by formatting it as different types of data. But this is not a good approach in terms of larger applications. When we have a larger application, we should try to encapsulate the data into a separate service so that it can be centralized and then shared as a service across the different parts of the application. Now, a service is just an Angular class, and therefore it's very easy for us to create it. What we will do is we will go to our app folder. Now, in a bigger application, you would separate services into their own folder like Pages, but here we're just going to add a new file, and we're going to call it inquiry.service.ts. So we've now got our inquiry.service.ts, and what we should do is we should now start to give it some data with which it can work. At the moment, our data is split across two files. In home.ts we have these, and these are the first ones we're going to use. So I'm going to copy this set of data, this array of objects, and I'm going to do that first. We've also got data in this array here, and we'll deal with that later. So in our inquiry.service.ts, we need to do export class inquiry service and just paste our data in there. Oh, class cow. So that's our service created. So I've just saved that. And what we're going to do is we're going to work with this still as hard-coded data for the first part while we develop the features of our application as we move forward. As I've said, we'll deal with categories later on. Now that we've created our service, our inquiry service, we need to declare it in our app.module.ts so that the rest of the application knows how to use it. So what we have to do is we have to import it first, and then we will declare it as a provider. So I've typed in the import statement here. Import inquiry service from, and it's in the same folder structure, so /inquiry service. Now what we have to do is we have to add it as a provider. So I'm going to put it here, and separate it with a comma from this object which is handling the errors. So we've now declared this. We can save our file here so that we have availability now to use this service in the pages of the application. We now need to make that data available from our service, the place we're going to use it, which is in one of the pages, of course, and it's in the home.ts page. We're going to replace this hard-coded data that we've got with the service which will provide it from a different place. So what we're going to do is we're firstly going to have to import it, and then we're going to have to initialize it in the constructor. So I've typed the import statement here. Import inquiry service from, then we have to go up 2 levels, which is the source, then find app, then find inquiry service. So that's .. / then the app folder, and then inquiry service, and that's it now imported. So our next step is to put it into the constructor. We do this by a process of injection, and what we do is we'll put it on a new line, and we'll put it just here. So I've now put it as one of the elements which is stated in the constructor here. Once again, private, because we don't want it to be public. Private. A variable starts with the small e and the capital S, and I've got a mistake there, capital inquiry service, and this is declared as an inquiry service that we've just imported. We can use this inquiry service type as a variable or an object, whatever you choose to call it. What we'll need to do now is initialize it in the constructor by setting it to the service that we want. You notice that the IntelliSense was really strong here. That as soon as we said this, it knew the objects that we had, one of which is inquiries, and then equals inquiry service dot inquiries. So it's really powerful for us filling in the right sort of code without making too many mistakes with typing, as you notice I frequently do. So what we can do now is we can get rid of this data and get it instead from our inquiry service, because that's the inquiries array that we've just asked it to initialize. But we need to leave our inquiries variable so that we can refer to it in the code. So that's what we've got, and I've just saved it. We're building, no gross errors as yet, so that's good. So what value have we had from getting this data from the hard-coded data in a file to hard-coded data in a service? Well, it centralizes the data, and it makes it much easier when we come to do the various operations that we would normally conduct with data. The CRUD, the create, read, update and delete, means that we're all centralizing them into a separate service, and this separation of concerns is a very important principle. We've ended up with exactly the same data. We've got the same data as we had before, and we're able to do the same things we were able to do before. All of our things are working well. So what we need to do now is we need to deal with the types and move them into the service so that they can also be used in the same way as a remote, disconnected set of data. Our types of inquiries are here in this line of code here. And in our application, these types mean nothing without there being an inquiry. So it's really sort of logical for us to put them inside the inquiry service in the same way, because they're entirely dependent on each other. So I just copied them into there. Oops, wrong ones. So the inquiry service now has the types, and these will be available in the same way as they are from our service for our inquiries array. So I'm just going to save that, make sure that I haven't broken anything. And then what we'll do is we'll make sure that when we go to this page and we use this select, that the data that it gets from here will be fed from this service. So we now need to import this service into the detail page. So what I'll do is I'll copy the import statement from here, because it's the same one obviously. Control C, and I'll go to my details service there, TypeScript file, and paste it. So we've now got that. Control S. And what we'll do now is we'll inject it so that we can use it. So we've imported it, so now we can use it in the constructor. So let's put it on a new line, and we'll make it private. So we've now got it as a member of the declaration data sets, so that's good. And now we can now add it into the initializing data. So this dot categories, sorry, this dot types. I keep thinking about categories equals inquiry service dot types. So we can now get rid of these types here by just doing that. We have the types as a variable that we're going to be able to use. So let's just tidy up some code a bit. and I've saved it, and nothing is completely and drastically broken. So if I do that, I still have my types. So we've moved the data from the individual files into this central service. Could this possibly be making you think about a data server, a database server, a file server? Because that's exactly the sort of model that we would use. We have a centralized source of data which would be updated, and then the application itself would always have the most up-to-date and complete sets of data that it needs. What we've just done is known as refactoring. We've taken this data point into a single place. We took data out of home TS and we took data out of detail TS, and we've now put those into a refactored service which we call one set of code from different places. We're going to do some more refactoring in a minute, and what we're going to do is we're going to take our types of data which are used here and give them what's called a model, so that this structure is defined in what's called an interface, and this will be the data model for these types of inquiries, so that we are very, very much more able to control the types of data that are used in each inquiry.